Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Good Mother's Day to you out there from the Junk Be Gone studios here at the Sports Source. We appreciate you joining us on this holiday. We have a packed show for you today. For one thing, you know, it's been 25 years since Tennessee won that national championship in 1998, football obviously. But there's some similarities between 98 and this year. And we're going to take a look. Last week we looked at, okay, is Tennessee really a top 10 team? What do we see that's kind of worried about that? Let's take it the other way. I didn't see them coming close to a national championship last year, and they barely missed the playoffs. How close are they to a national title this year? What is the path to get there? We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little basketball. We'll talk recruiting. You've got which of the 5 Tennessee main programs right now is the best if you had to invest in one over the next 10 years? Because Danny White, I don't know if he's got them all rolling, but they're all rolling under Danny White's leadership. So we'll talk about a lot of different stuff here on the show, including the viral video of the week, a funny video we'll put for you at the end of the show. So stick with us till then. First segment of our program brought to you by the friends of us, our friends over at the Garza Law Firm. Friends of us. That's good. They should put that on the sign. Upper East Tennessee, Lower East Tennessee, anywhere in East Tennessee where you can see this ad, the Garza Law Firm can come to your aid. Marcos Garza and his team of attorneys even opened an office in Jacksboro recently. If you need legal help, turn to a group that has a long, long history of helping your neighbors right here in East Tennessee. That's the Garza Law Firm, garzalaw.com to learn more. All right, and you can now learn more about who we got on the show right now. And we got one more waiting in the wings. Got a VFL waiting in the wings. We'll keep his name hidden for now. Right over here, Chuck Cavaleris, longtime sports writer from 99.1 The Sports Animal, Sports Talk in the AM now. You can get it every day with John Wilkerson. Vince Ferrara, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Right here from GoVols247.com, getting into your busy season. We got Ryan Callahan, and right there, Bob Hodge, longtime sports writer, longtime member of this panel. Thank you very much for being here, gentlemen.
Glad to be here.
Okay. As I was saying, it seems like yesterday that a bunch of guys from the 1998 National Championship team were on our show, on our old set, and I had a bunch of those guys out here, and we talked about the 20th anniversary.
I know.
And now you're blinking, it's the 25th anniversary.
Don't blink again.
Yeah, don't blink again. Time flies. 25th anniversary, and on the surface, there are some comparisons to be made, some similarities. Let's take a look here at these. 1998, the Vols were ranked number 10 in the preseason AP poll. They were coming off an 11-2 season and an Orange Bowl berth. Had a record-setting quarterback that had just graduated, and a new quarterback was set to take over as starter. 2023, Tennessee is already ranked number 10, number 11 in 2 of the early preseason rankings. Coming off an 11-2 season and an Orange Bowl berth. Record-setting quarterback just graduated, and a new quarterback set to take over as starter. Okay, I'm stretching a little bit, but those are some similarities. I mean, come on, that's some real comparisons there. My question, you know, in 98, Tennessee was ranked behind Florida and LSU. I'm surprised I didn't remember LSU being ranked number 9 that year. But Florida and LSU were the preseason. This year you're looking at Alabama, Georgia, and LSU all going to be ahead of Tennessee probably in that early rank. So it's a little different there. And we'll get into how the seasons have changed and the systems have changed next. But just in this segment, is it fair to make comparisons, to start this conversation, is it fair to make comparisons between 98 and 2023? And we will start with Vince.
I think it is, not because it's any sort of guarantee that they're going to do the same thing, but because they're in the same starting spot. And also, I think it's pretty comparable on what the schedule looks like in terms of number of teams that could be potential losses for you. You have some elite teams up there. You have some, ranked teams, and you have some games that on paper you're supposed to win. So I think because it is comparable and because of the direction of the program right now, I think you can make a case that it is similar. Not that they'll absolutely do it, but I think there are enough similarities to where that's not far-fetched.
And you mentioned it, John. The 2022 team knows how close they were, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if not for that, that Hendon Hooker injury and the other thing. So now 2023, here's what's
The
possible.
other thing. The other thing being a blowout loss at South Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. But here's what's possible. Here's what happened. It's not like this has never happened before. So take care of business and great things can happen.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, that 98 team, the bad taste in the 98 team, the bad taste in the mouth came from their last game, that Orange Bowl debacle. Whereas this year's team may have a bad taste in its mouth over the fact that you were this close and you didn't get there. Was this a fair comparison to make or no?
The 98 team, when you think back about it, everybody national championship. But then when you dig into it, there was all the little miracles that happened along the way. Mm-hmm. The little things that you can't count on. Pass interference at Syracuse, Clint Sterner, all those things that came into play.
Which all championship teams have to have.
Which all championship teams have to have. And that was going to be my point. I think Tennessee, going into this season, is good enough to be an upper-tier SEC team. I don't think you're Georgia, even though you beat them last year. I don't think you're Alabama. I think LSU may be getting a little too much love too early, but it's the time of year that you do that. So to me, the question is going to come down to those little teeny tiny things that you can't control, because Tennessee, on paper, if Joe Milton is good enough, that could get them in that mix. And I think you also got to go back to 98. It was your defense that was just outstanding in 98. Okay, defense, I don't want to say it's irrelevant now, but let's face it, it's an offensive game. So, yeah, the little breaks go your way. We'll see when it happens. But is Milton good enough to maintain that offensive edge that you've had?
You got to be good enough to be in position to take advantage of those little miracles.
Exactly.
And that's one of those things that 98 team just, if you gave them the opportunity, they took advantage. I mean, I was there for that Arkansas game when they couldn't get anything going. They get that fumble. It's just Henry. It's not a problem. At that point, it's like, okay, we got our opportunity. Let's take advantage. That's a very special team. That 98 team also had a lot more talent, but at the time, we didn't know there were going to be 30 guys drafted off that 4-year kind of era there. We had more guys drafted this past year from Tennessee than I expected. So while I say recruiting rankings-wise and all that kind of stuff, 98 probably had more talent, and in hindsight, more talent. Going into the season, I don't know that it was really that much more talent. I mean, they're both number 10 in the country is kind of where they're going to start out. Talk to me about is it a fair comparison talent-wise in your opinion?
I don't think so, because you're talking about the 4 years before that. You're recruiting off the success of Heath Shuler and Peyton Manning. Tennessee's not had that yet. Now, they could, in the next few years, put that together. But right now, this team, I don't think talent-wise it's there yet. But I will give you a couple things that I think make this comparison valid. Elite on one side of the ball. I think there's a chance this could be another top 10 offense at least, if not number one again. Maybe not that high, but even if you take a small step back and average 42 points a game, still could be really good. So even if it's close, you're elite on one side of the ball, much like that team was elite on defense. And the other thing is, I see an SEC that lines up a little bit like that 1998 SEC did, in the sense that there's not a very deep top tier to me. I think it's Georgia, Alabama, and then in some ways everybody else. Maybe LSU in there as a third team. There's really not a lot that Tennessee has to worry about, because Florida looks down, South Carolina better but still beatable. There's not a lot of teams in Tennessee's way that you'd say they can't get past, and that sort of lines up like 1998 to me, if you're looking for comparisons.
All right, so we're saying the comparisons are legit. Very quickly, Bob.
I was just going to come back to the teams that you need to beat. Auburn in 98 was one of those teams. People forget about the goal line stand. First and goal with the one they didn't score.
With Al Wilson out, I think, correct?
It comes back to those little things. I just don't want to emphasize it too much, but not too little either. I just think this whole season comes down to Joe Milton. I really do. If Joe Milton is close to Hendon Hooker, the sky's the limit.
There's more on him this year than there was T. Martin in 98.
Exactly. Thank you for making the point I was trying to make.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about T. Martin. You had the defense. You had the defense to take up for you. But also, if you go back and look, they went from like 60-40 in passing to 45-55. It was a huge shift from going from passing all the time, probably too much in hindsight with Peyton Manning. If they'd give him a run game at Florida, who knows what happens. But you threw it all the time with Peyton. Then you came back with T. Martin and you went to more of a running Offense.
Yeah.
And then he had that unbelievable game at South
What
Carolina.
was it, 22 completions in a row,
not,
22
not
something like
knocking
22.
T. Martin, but in terms of
Right.
No,
he
not
didn't-
marking T. Martin
He
at
didn't
all,
have to
but
carry
there
the team the
is
way.
more on Joe Milton.
Yeah, there's more on Milton. All right, tell you what, let's show you what we're going to do the rest of the show here. We've got path to a national title. What would be Tennessee's easiest path? Okay, and I know you're saying, well, let's go 15-0 and beat everybody. Yeah, that's not particularly easy. So what would be the easiest path, and how possible is it? Which UT program, as I teased earlier, which UT program right now over there on campus is the best? Which one would you invest in over the next 10 years, just to make it difficult? We'll talk about basketball transfers, a surprise name in the portal. What does it mean? Does it mean anything? Recruiting update. Vols are getting a lot of love. Brian Callahan, Vince Ferraro will explain why. And then roll out the barrel. I'll save that for a little bit. We'll talk more about why I want a barrel to be rolled out. All right. When we come back, let's talk about, was it easier to win a national championship in the old 1998 days, or is it easier now in the 2023 days? System's different. Seasons are different. Which is easier? Come on back, we'll discuss.